As humans, competition is a natural part of life. One's for survival, for getting the resources, passing on genetics and all that stuff, for social status, trying to maintain a higher rank than the next guy, and of course, for sport. First basic, then more complex. What starts as who can jump the highest and run the fastest eventually becomes something more defined. In order to create a level playing field, we make rules. Rules we might use to say without a doubt who the victor is. This piece can only move that many spaces on the board. At least one foot must stay in contact with the ground at all times when walk racing. For lifters, I bet I can lift that stone and you can't becomes the barbell must start from exactly 9 inches off the ground every time, or you must show complete control with the bar locked out overhead. Not bad things. With rules, we can compare ourselves to others, and we can say for sure who won the event. Very cool. Sometimes, though, that need for competition can get in the way. Sometimes people forget that there is a difference between training and competing. Competition and training for competition are different things. Take a typical gym scenario. Lifter A does 500-pound rack pulls set to knee height, and upon seeing this, lifters B and C, most likely from behind their computer screens, feel the need to make sure everyone knows the weight doesn't count because it wasn't lifted from the floor. "That's not a real 500, they exclaim through gritted teeth. Lifters B and C have missed the point. Lifter A is using the rack pull to fix a specific weakness he has. He is training, but without context, the average uninformed, numbers-obsessed lifter goes straight to, "That's cheating," or "That doesn't count." The same thing happens with heavy sandbag lifting sometimes. The ego-driven lifter declares, "The sandbag must start on the ground, always, or you're just wasting your time." Because of this kind of person, the newer or unsure lifter often assumes it to be correct. He doesn't know any better. "I do have to lift this from the ground every time, right? I must do the full thing, right?" Well, in my opinion, no. You don't need to lift a sandbag all the way up from the ground every single time you work with it. In fact, I'm gonna make the bold claim that sometimes it's actually much better if you don't. In competition, sure, do the full thing. But when training, I believe there is a lot to be gained from partial, or more accurately, focused sandbag exercise. That's what I want to talk about today. Possibly the greatest addition you might make to your heavy sandbag lifting routine of all time, using a platform. What do I mean by using a platform? Nothing more than simply finding some kind of sturdy object. That could be a second sandbag, a bench, a plyo box, just some kind of elevated surface, and lifting your sandbag from that surface rather than from the ground. Why? A few reasons, but mainly because it lets you lock in with effective sandbag muscle and strength building exercises without being held back by the lift from the ground. Carries, box squats, the lift from the lap to the chest, some of the greatest sandbag exercises there are. The platform lets you focus all of your attention on them completely and maximize their potential. If you think about it, always lifting from the ground is a bit silly. It'd be like forcing yourself to clean a barbell from the floor every time you want to press it. That's alright, but really, if you're going to press a barbell, why not just place the bar on pins in a power rack and take the press itself for all it's worth? Using a platform for your sandbag is like that. The amount of quality volume you're able to accumulate when using a platform is just in a different dimension entirely when compared with always starting your lifts from the ground. Before moving on, I do quickly want to make it clear, I'm advocating for using a platform sometimes, not always. Make sure you still do at least some heavy lifting from the ground in your workouts too. For most lifters, using a platform will allow for much heavier weights to be lifted. Here's an example. Let's say you could technically lift 300 pounds from your lap to your chest and carry it around, but you only have the strength to lift 250 from the ground. Here, forcing yourself to lift from the ground every time would mean you'd only ever be able to train with something like 80% of what you're capable of for the carry. You could just carry the bag further, of course, but it's not the same. Think about the effects of carrying 300 versus 250. The difference is significant. There's also the basic effects of lifting a bag from the ground to consider. In addition to, in a sense, pre-exhausting your muscles for whatever you plan on doing after you lift the bag, there's cardio too. Not only does lifting from the ground use up strength reserves you could otherwise put towards the thing you're actually trying to do, it also gets you out of breath, meaning fewer reps or less distance traveled. Going back to our example, compare two different scenarios. One, you start your set by lifting 250 off the ground and bringing it to your lap. After that, you lift the 250 from your lap to your chest and start walking. Starting from that place of pre-fatigue, you manage to carry the bag 50 feet. Now scenario 2, you start by lifting 300 from a platform straight to your chest, conserving energy, then again you start walking. In this set, you also managed to go 50 feet with the bag, only this time you used 50 more pounds. That's a massive increase in tonnage with the exercise you were actually trying to work. Consider what 50 feet with 300 versus 50 feet with 250 means. There's muscle gain, more reps, or in this case more steps with heavier weight means more gains, straight up. Strength, more time with heavier weights means becoming stronger. And this is all just on a one-to-one scale. When looking at the entirety of a training program, the benefits of the platform go so far beyond that. Consider systemic fatigue and weekly recovery resources. Using a platform rather than lifting from the ground means you'll be able to accumulate more weekly volume with less fatigue. Sad as it may be, lifting things from the ground is fatiguing. That's how it goes. There's a reason most can squat much more frequently than they can deadlift. Picking stuff up off the ground wears you down. Now I'd like to cover a few ways I like using a platform with sandbags, starting with overload training. Lifting from a platform lets you use much heavier weights than you otherwise could, and more heavy time under tension will lead to more strength and muscle. I think I've made that part clear already. Those are the direct, to-the-point effects, but there are indirect effects too. When using a platform, every movement from the lap on up will become extremely powerful. Strong points become even stronger points. This can be huge in so many ways. Let's use someone struggling to shoulder a sandbag as an example. If a lifter's having trouble shouldering 250, then spends a while getting really good at lifting 300 from his lap to his chest, think about how fast that 250 is going to move when he goes back to it. It will fly up so high the shoulder is all but guaranteed. Using the platform overloading strategy also teaches your body what truly heavy weight feels like and can give you an edge. After lifting 300, 200 is nothing. Basically, overloading makes lighter weights feel lighter. In this way, the lift from the ground might even improve without you even spending much time on it. If 250 is your max from the ground and you decide to start moving 300 from your lap on a consistent basis, eventually 250 is going to feel like nothing by comparison, and you might find you're able to pick it up off the ground much easier than you could before. Lastly, ultra-heavy weights also have a positive effect on bone density and the strength of the tendons and ligaments and all that, making you more resilient to injury. Here are a few of my favorite exercises to use with the platform overload method. First, and probably my favorite of all, is the platform lap to chest platform lift, done for heavy singles. Place an ultra-heavy sandbag on a platform, high enough so you can lift it to your chest without needing to bend over or squat down more than just a little bit. Pick it up with a bear hug grip, take 2 short steps back and place the sandbag on your lap. Take a deep breath and brace, and drive the bag up with as much force as you can manage until you're again holding it against your chest, then place it back on the platform. A quick note on these, when lifting from the lap, there are 2 different techniques you can use. You can either keep a completely upright torso angle and quarter squat the weight up, or you can drive your hips back a bit and lift more by extending your hips. Typically, I prefer that second option most of the time, but with these heavy overloads, I tend to favor the squat method myself, something to play around with. My favorite way to use this exercise is for timed density sets. Set a timer for something like 10 to 30 minutes and just do as many heavy singles as you can while maintaining proper form and bracing, and try to do more each workout. Another method you might use is cluster sets. Using slightly less weight, get the sandbag to your lap and do 3 reps, lifting it up to your chest, then set it on the platform, wait 10 to 15 seconds, do it again, and see how many you can get. 5 clusters of 3 makes for a very potent set. Another exercise I like to use with this method is very heavy bear hug carries done for short bursts. Place a sandbag on your platform, again high enough so you can bring it to your chest without needing to bend over or squat down much. Pick it up with a bear hug grip, go for something like 10 to 15 seconds, set the sandbag back on the platform, rest, and repeat. Using this method, I'd try to make sure each carry is close, but not all the way to complete failure. I like doing this in the same way as the platform lap to chest platform lift, max carry distance for something in the 10 to 30 minute range. These also work great using the EMOM method, every minute on the minute. Taking a very heavy sandbag for 15 seconds every minute for 20 minutes straight might be one of the most intense things you'll ever do. I'm also a huge fan of using the platform for box squats. Set a heavy bag on your platform, pick it up, and slowly, very carefully move to your box and sit down. Once in position, try to take the set as far as you can rest pause style, resting as long as is needed between reps without ever setting the bag down. Unlike with lighter weights, where you'll find you could potentially keep rest pausing forever, with a very heavy sandbag, you will reach a point where continuing on just won't happen, regardless of how long you rest. Reaching true, complete failure with the box squat using heavy weight is a really great change of pace if you've been working with lighter weight box squats. And every single rep you can add to that heavy set as the weeks go by will mean drastically improved strength for your high rep sets too. I've said this before, but I really believe taking my 275-pound bag up to 50 reps was one of the biggest factors in me managing a bodyweight 150-pound bag for 1,000. After so much time with 275, 150 just feels tiny. Don't overdo it with the overload training. Too much frequency and it will bury you. Once every 2 weeks, maybe once every week on occasion is a good place to be. And finally, be very careful with this overloading method and do it at your own discretion. Work your way up slowly and don't rush into something you're not ready for. The second way I like to use the platform is with standard weights, sandbags you could technically lift from the ground every time, and taking them for very high reps. Up until this point, I've been talking about the platform in terms of heavy weight, but you can also use the same weights you otherwise would and just get way more work done. Consider a bear hug carry. Maybe you've been doing 10-minute sets of max distance, and you've been forcing yourself to set your sandbag all the way down on the ground every time you need to stop and catch your breath. Using this setup, let's say you can usually make it about 1,000 feet. Using a platform instead, skipping the lift from the ground, you might make it a full 2,500 or 3,000 feet in that time, meaning much more time under tension with the exercise you're actually trying to work, and less time spent standing there catching your breath or working up the courage to pick the bag back up again. Consider the lift from the lap. If your goal is muscle, think about how quickly you could just trash your upper back and glutes by lifting a sandbag from your lap over and over without needing to pick the thing up from the ground every time. Imagine the straight-up arm gains you could get doing endless hands-apart grip carries for 30 minutes, never needing to worry about anything other than continuing on with that one specialized exercise. Using a platform is also great for strength endurance training. Consider again the density setup, going for max reps in 10 to 30 minutes. When using anything other than weights that are honestly pretty light, I found lifting from the ground every rep pushes the set much more in the direction of pure endurance rather than actual strength endurance. I found muscle fatigue pairs much more evenly with the endurance challenge when using a platform, making for a more well-rounded strength endurance builder. The high rep platform method can also be a great way to get a lot of practice in with specific exercises. Maybe you've been trying to learn the throw and catch exercise, but you can't seem to get it down. Well, with a platform, you can just roll the bag onto your lap, do a set of 1 to 3, set it back onto the platform, rest a minute or two, and keep going. The same could be done with any technical exercise. Removing the ground to lap portion lets you hone in on one particular skill or part of a skill. Last here, just like with the heavy overload stuff, high reps can be a great way to strengthen the tendons and ligaments too. Many people focus on either one end or the other, but I believe the two are two sides of the same coin. For maximum durability gains, doing both very heavy and high rep stuff is the way to go. Now for a few of my favorite exercises to use with the high rep platform method. First is just taking a light to medium weight sandbag for a max distance carry and a set time limit. Any grip will do here. Bear hug, over, under, horizontal, they all work. Place your sandbag on a platform, pick it up, carry it for something like 20 to 30 seconds, set it back on the platform, rest a couple seconds, go again, and continue on until the time is up. You'd be surprised how far you can actually go with these, and how quickly you adapt to basically never stopping to rest for more than a couple seconds at a time. This setup works really well when using a high sets, low reps approach too. If you're doing some kind of power lifting technique from your lap to your chest for 10 sets of 3, for example, placing your sandbag on a platform between sets lets you focus everything on being as powerful as you can with that one specific exercise. I also like this for practicing the moderate weight lap to shoulder lift, using a sandbag that takes maybe 2 to 3 heaves to reach the shoulder from the lap. The platform lets you get a lot of quality practice in. Another great use for this is the one motion lap to shoulder using an underfilled sandbag. Rolling an underfilled bag off a platform to your lap makes it so out of shape, trying to shoulder it becomes the most challenging thing ever. The sandbag just saps your strength on every lift. This is an example of where using a platform actually makes an exercise more challenging without even needing to add extra weight. Actually, any power move you do after lifting from a platform will likely feel extra challenging. When starting from a platform, you can't make use of the momentum generated by lifting a bag from the ground. What's in motion stays in motion, and lifting from the ground gets things moving. When rolling the bag to your lap rather than lifting it, you'll be forced to start your reps from a complete dead stop, which is challenging, yes, but greatly improves starting strength and power, making you more powerful overall. Alright, now I'm going to quickly show how I get my sandbag up onto a platform. First of all, I should say, you don't need all of this stuff. Most of these sandbags are just here because this floor is really slippery and the bags will slide otherwise. You could easily just put your platform up against a wall or something like that, and that'll keep everything in place. Also, you don't need sandbags. Anything will work. A bench, whatever. I know some people are going to say, I don't have all this stuff, I can't do this, but there's something. A chair. As long as it can support some weight, you'll be good. And if you really can't do it, just use a sandbag that is lighter, something you can actually pick up. Then pick it up, set it on the platform, and then add the weight afterwards. First, you want to kind of push the top of the bag a little bit, and then do a little bit, get a bit of a wedge underneath so it's at an angle just a bit. After that, you're going to lift this almost like flipping a tire. The main thing here is you do not want to curl it, especially if you're using a very heavy weight. So rather than having your hands right in front of you like this and trying to curl the weight up, definitely have your hands around the outside so you're in more of a neutral grip. Also, you want to initiate the rep, at least this is how I do it for maximum safety of the bicep tendons. When you're here, I'm going to start by just shrugging my shoulders. That's going to give me a couple inches just like right there. And then from there, I can almost push the bag against my stomach and have very minimal elbow bend. And just trying to minimize the chance of getting injured or something, because especially if you're doing this with a very heavy sandbag, there's always that chance. So deep breath and brace as always, and this is what it looks like. Once it's here, get your arms under, it's against my knees now. Another deep breath. Push it, just like that. Now it's on the platform. From there, my end goal is actually to get it this one right here, because this is taller. This one up here, it's gonna allow me to lift it straight from the platform to my chest and not have to worry about like bending down or anything. So from here, there are a few ways you can do it. For me, I need to have the top facing up because I'm gonna be adding plates to this. So pull it towards me, it's like this, and grab the top. Just like that, now it's flipped. Now from here, this is gonna be the hardest part because this isn't that high up. It's high enough that it's gonna make things a lot easier than if I was trying to lift it off the ground, but it's still down there. So here, I like to push it forward a little bit, get into position. All right, here we go. Once your sandbag is up on the platform, if you want to make it heavier, the first option is to simply open it up and add some weight. Typically, bigger sandbags like this 275 Cerberus here end up having at least a little bit of space when filled to capacity. If you're using an Iron Mind or any other top knot style bag, this is super easy. Just put the weight on the inside of the main bag and outside of the inner liner bag. If your sandbag doesn't have any extra space, there are a few tricks you can use to load it up extra heavy. A few creative training hacks, you might say. I'm not the best at those. Lucky, I know someone who is. Thanks to Florian from Creative Training Hacks for agreeing to help us out here. If you're having any trouble loading up that sandbag, this next part is for you.
Hi everyone, and thank you Cody. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to be back on your channel. And I must say, this time the task you entrusted me with also turned out to be a really interesting challenge. As some of you may remember, I do have some experience with adding extra weights to sandbags. However, as you can see, we are talking about special DIY models here, which by design are rather conducive to strapping on weight plates. These bags are kind of rectangular and also super tightly packed, which helps to keep the weight plate and the resistance bands in place without any risk of them slipping off. And that was absolutely crucial given the purpose these plate-loaded DIY sandbags had. As you can see, I used to lift them to the shoulder. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a feasible way of fixing a weight plate to a purpose-made cylindrical sandbag that would meet the same safety standard. Except maybe for a small weight plate on a small sandbag that is also very tightly packed. So, full disclaimer, While shouldering an ultra-heavy sandbag from a platform can also be an interesting challenge. To this end, please get one that has enough space left on the inside to pack the extra weight. But on the positive side, all of the following creative hacks of loading a purpose-made sandbag up extra heavy are definitely trustworthy enough for the 3 overload methods Cody has shown us earlier in this video. Platform, lap to chest platform, short bear hug carries, and box squats. Okay, let's start with the most convenient, intuitive, and probably also most common method. Holding the weight in front of the sandbag with your hands. No extra fixation needed. If you have some other training equipment besides sandbags, chances are that you will find something suitable. For example, most kettlebells are fit for that purpose. You can also use an easy bar. And if you only have weight plates and long barbells at your disposal, I recommend you buy one of these inexpensive wooden dowels and turn it into a conveniently short DIY barbell by clipping on 2 extra collars that serve as plate stoppers on the inside. Another more expensive but also really handy option is this kind of backpack weight with a handle on either side. Shout out to Jacob from Sandbag Misfit for making me aware of it by showing it on his channel. In general, holding the extra weight in your hands has the advantage that it doesn't limit you when it comes to choosing the height at which you grab your sandbag. Closer to the bottom, somewhere in the middle, or closer to the top. As I will show you later, that really does make a difference regarding your target muscles. Now, if this method is so great, why not stop there? Why should you even bother to learn how to fix the extra weight directly to the sandbag? Why should I even bother to show you? Well, to put it bluntly, because too much convenience can become a trap. The same trap that in the gym will make you ditch dumbbells and barbells for the sole use of machines. Or even closer to our case here, it's the trap that will make you use lifting straps in every pulling exercise without ever bothering to improve your grip strength. Don't get me wrong, I'm not generally against machines or lifting straps, like I'm also not generally against sofas, for example. There is a time and place for them, I just don't think it's a good idea to become dependent on them. Especially since, when it comes to sandbags, the unhandiness, the lack of a handle is one of their defining features. So, just like Cody put it regarding the use of a platform, I'm advocating for using a handle on an extra heavy sandbag sometimes, not always. Make sure you still do at least some heavy lifting with your bare hands on the sandbag in your workouts too. So now I'm going to show you some options how to provide the extra load that will still allow you to grip your sandbag like you normally would. Let's begin with the least complicated one. 1 plate, 1 resistance band. Choose the strongest band that you can still thread through the whole of the plate. Pull the band through until the plate is exactly at half of its folded length. First loop the adjacent half of the band over the sandbag, readjust the length, then pull the plate tight on the sandbag by strapping the other half of the band over it. Since it doesn't really add to the stability if you cross the strands of the band, I recommend to keep them parallel, because that makes it easier to adjust their length, so the tension gets evenly distributed among all segments of the band around the sandbag. In my case here, this simple option is limited to a 10 kg plate with a 30 mm hole in it. But if your plates have a 2-inch hole or slots for gripping, you can probably fix even heavier weights that way, using a wider resistance band. In any case, always make sure to only use completely undamaged resistance bands that don't have any nicks in them. Especially if the hole in the middle of the weight plate has relatively sharp edges, there's always some risk the band might get nicked over time. So please always check the band once more after use. To avoid this risk, you can use some additional equipment like these short black tie-down straps. Depending on their length, you might want to add 1 large carabiner. In some cases, this will also make the fixation process a bit easier. So this is option number 2, especially suitable for really heavy plates like this 20 kg or 44 pound specimen here. Attaching it like this with the bands entirely above it has the advantage that the plate can be easily swung out, which means less trouble getting your hands under it. On the downside, if your sandbag isn't as long as this one and/or your plate has a wider diameter, it will end up hanging too low. On the other hand, if you make the tie-down strap connection shorter, so that the second resistance band runs directly over the surface of the plate, you can fix it higher up on the sandbag. But as you can see, this will give you a harder time taking a firm grip. You will have to somehow prop the plate up, and as soon as you lift the sandbag off, your hands will kind of get trapped in an uncomfortable way. If the dimensions of the plate and/or sandbag force you to apply this method, I recommend you cover the plate in duct tape first, as I've done it here, so that your hands don't get scratched or bruised by the embossing on the weight plate. My preferred option is number 3, which is practically number 1 applied twice for fixing 2 plates to the sandbag, each at a diagonal angle between the front and the side. The space in the middle between the plates allows you to adjust and change your grip as often as you need to, which can even become essential during a rest-pause set of super heavy box squats, for example. As you can see, for even more convenience, I've put short dowels under the plates. For the same purpose, you could also roll up some magazine really tight and fix it with duct tape. There got to be many more options. Really anything that creates a little extra space under the plates will do. This one is definitely your go-to option if you must or want to have your hands at the same height as the extra weight on the sandbag. Which brings us to an interesting general topic, leverage. So far, when it comes to fixing weight plates on the outside of your sandbag, it seemed like your choice was mostly directed by physical circumstances. Parameters like height and girth of the sandbag, diameter of the plate and the hole in the plate respectively, as well as the width and strength of the resistance band. And in many cases this impression holds true, especially if the sandbag in question is on the stubbier side. However, the more elongated your sandbag is, the more you will have to decide on your own which phase of the lift you want to target more by placing the extra weight higher or lower. That goes for the lift from the lap as well as the box squat. Fixing the extra weight closer to the top of the sandbag will make the initial phase of the lift harder, because the leverage of the gravity center will work against you. The more you tend to lean forward in this phase, the greater this effect will be. If you've chosen a fixation that allows the plate to swing out, it will add even more to that adverse leverage. This position of the extra weight means a greater challenge for your back extensors and the whole upper back. By the way, burying the plates in the top half of the sand inside the bag falls into the same category, although to a smaller degree. Toward the end of the lift, as soon as you start to lean backward, the leverage will be to your advantage, making the terminal hip extension easier, which means less work for your glute maximus and hamstrings. With the extra weight on the lower half of the sandbag, it's the opposite, of course. Initially, rising from a bent over position will become easier because the leverage of the lower gravity center will pull the sandbag into a more upright position, just like it was a cone. On the other hand, terminal hip extension in the upright position will become harder because it means moving the heavier end of the sandbag out of the center line. Unless your knees are fully extended too, which from a certain sandbag weight upward becomes impossible because it would make you tip over to the front. Which muscle groups you wish to tax harder is completely up to you. As I've explained before, our choice may be limited by our training equipment, but there is no right or wrong when it comes to specifically targeting certain muscles and muscle groups. You can try to improve a weakness by submitting the respective muscles to a particularly adverse leverage, or you can go for maximum overload, choosing that kind of leverage that plays to your personal strength. But in any case, I find it rather intriguing that you can have that kind of choice at all. Weighting different lever arms differently heavy is something you wouldn't necessarily associate with sandbag lifting. That sounds more like a prime fitness machine in a really fancy bodybuilding gym, right? Who would have thought? And that's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening, everyone. And thanks again, Cody, for having me on your channel.
Thanks again for sharing these awesome ideas. If you're watching and that helped you out in any way, please be sure to go check out the Creative Training Hacks channel and let Florian know. I wanted to end this video with some thoughts on using a platform and real-world strength and sport applications. The lift from the ground is supposed to be the most real-world functional exercise of all time, right? Maybe, but we could argue that a very large majority of any lifting you do in the real world using heavy weights will be from at least a slightly elevated height. Most truly heavy objects don't lie completely flat, or if they do, they can be manipulated or leveraged so they don't. Lots of natural rock is lopsided, furniture has legs, logs can be leveraged, cement posts grabbed higher up, bags of things typically function more like underfilled sandbags and bend at the edges before you're forced to handle the full weight, meaning a leverage advantage. I don't mean to discredit the basic lift from the ground in that completely bent over position, and building strength there is one of the best things you could ever do to prepare yourself for any potential scenario, but I do think it's likely a lot of the time you won't need to bend over completely to lift things, and when you do, it will be with objects that are relatively light compared with what you're capable of. Cardboard boxes can only get so heavy, the same with packs of soil or animal feed. I would argue in a real-world setting, you'll likely be able to pick up most things you'll interact with just by building basic strength lifting a sandbag in general. That probably won't be what holds you back. What would hold you back would be carrying the object. In a real-world setting, there's rarely a time where you'll just pick something up and drop it. More likely than not, you'll need to carry the thing from point A to point B, or load it up onto something, which again would probably require you take at least a few steps with the weight in your hands. I'd argue if real-world functional strength is the goal, the true ultimate skill would be learning to carry things. In this way, using a platform to lift your sandbag, at least some of the time, so you can make everything from the lap on up exceedingly strong, might be the best way to gain true real-world strength. If you learn to carry a 300-pound sandbag, what's carrying a 100-pound bag of cement going to be like? Nothing. And if you've learned to carry a 150-pound bag for a half to a full mile in under an hour, what will carrying those 100-pound bags all day with lots of rest between sets be like? A lot easier, I can say that for sure. Basically what I mean is, it's more likely an object will surpass your capacity to carry it than it is an object will surpass your capacity to pick it up. So using a platform and becoming a master at everything from the lap on up might just be the most functional thing ever. Then there's sports to consider. Every sport is different, and making a broad, sweeping statement for all of them will always be wrong in some ways, but in general, with most athletics, lifting sports themselves being the exception, you'll be spending a very large majority of your time in something like a quarter squat position rather than a completely bent over one. Some bend at the knees and hips, feet roughly shoulder width apart, bent forward slightly. For most things, it's power and strength in that position you'll need. Think a defensive lineman, a wrestler, a rugby player, I could just keep going. Well, that position is basically exactly what the lift from the lap to the chest is. Your feet are roughly shoulder width apart, your knees are bent somewhere around quarter squat depth, your arms are reached forward and your back is engaged, then you lift explosively to a fully upright position. You might say the basic lift from the lap to the chest is the most athletic movement there is. Using a platform and overloading that movement with very heavy weights, as well as with very high reps, will probably make you a more generally athletic person. So, there's what I have to say on using a platform in your training. Competing is great. If you want to compare yourself to others, then of course present your strength by starting your sandbag lifts from the ground. But for building yourself up, I really think the platform is a massively underrated tool. It's basically changed everything for me, and I truly believe it's worth your time. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.